Welcome, Zachary, to a Curious Yogi podcast.
Thanks, Bobby. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it is wonderful to have you. You've been like on my dream podcast guest list for a while. I did have to ask a few times to get you locked and loaded, but I'm so glad to be here with you and to hear your knowledge and just to share your wisdom with all my friends. I feel, no, you're my friend, but the listeners are my friends too. But I feel like you are such a brilliant yogi and you're sitting on all these jewels of wisdom out in the Himalayas, and it'll be just nice for everybody to hear your story and hear some of your reflections on a lifetime of sadhana, because all the listeners, they love sadhana, they love yoga, and they just love the truth, which is what we love. So
Absolutely.
anytime we get the chance to talk about it, it's just the best.
It is the best. That's what we love the most.
Exactly, exactly. So without going like too far back, I think that it is worth noting how you've had such an interesting life. And, I was getting ready, I was just biking in the rain here in Malmo, and I was thinking like, okay, how will I introduce Zach? Like he is like in his advanced phases of your yoga. You could like reach enlightenment at any moment just because you've been really doing yoga. I'm really hyping you up, I know.
You really
You've
are.
been you've been living yoga since you were really young. And I think you've lived such an unusual life, and that's thanks to your parents and your teachers and everybody. But I think just to lay the foundation for the listeners of who you are and a little bit about your backstory and how you're at this age already done a lifetime of sadhana, basically.
Okay, I'll try to be concise. I can be a little bit wordy at times, so if I go on too long, just tell me I'm done. But yes, well, I guess it does start in Canada, in Vancouver. Um, my parents, we were in a family, and really, my parents were already meditating and were already somewhat connected to the ashram here in Kulu, but to Swamiji, but they they were basically quite unhappy. And my sister, I wasn't very physically well. My sister was unhappy at school, and I think my mom, being somewhat maybe rebellious or a hardcore hippie, something in her, a Shakti, she just decided that we needed some change, or else we weren't going to make it as a family. We were going to fall apart, or we were all just going to be miserable forever or something. So she just convinced my dad, and we packed everything up in 1988, and we moved to Kulu, to the ashram. And back then, there were a handful of families here with their kids, so we weren't the only ones. And it was quite an unusual community, as you can imagine, a community of expats living with a incredibly vibrant guru who was wild and was, um, in the scriptures, some might describe him as a Kundalini guru, in the sense that he wasn't all just love and hugs and sweetness. He could be quite fiery and was sort of on the war path to destroy every ego that came across his path, which could be extremely intense. But he wasn't interested in wasting time. He wasn't interested in just having people be in a nice space. He actually wanted to create masters. And so, because of that, he created a very specific kind of satsang situation. And for me, growing up, it was quite interesting because, and this is quite unusual, um, when you're growing up, you even if it's on a small scale, you make mistakes. You you break something, or you're mean to someone, or whatever it is. You do something you're not supposed to do, whatever, as a kid. And there's always your parents or your teachers or people to tell you that you've done something wrong, that you're mistaken. Um, and Swamiji, kind of the first thing that I really remember him saying to me is that you're never mistaken. And that's very powerful because by saying that you're mistaken, even if as a kid you do need some rules and everything, you can't just be left to run wild. Um, at the same time, to be told that you're mistaken actually makes you feel very small and creates a sense in you that, yeah, of just sort of profound smallness. And by Swamiji sort of instantly negating that right from the beginning, for all the kids who grew up here, I think that was quite powerful and created a sense in them that even if they were making mistakes in school or wherever in life, but that there was something inside of them that was always perfect, that was never mistaken. So it was hard to put as a kid, you didn't really know what that was. As a child, you don't really have enough of a developed mind to really know what the self is, what Swamiji is really referring to when he says you're perfect. You kind of thought, oh, like this person is perfect, or this person isn't making a mistake. But that's not really true. People are somewhat imperfect and do make mistakes. But he was referring to that being that's never mistaken. And so having that, and the other thing is that in Kulu, Swamiji was he was the leader of the group. So what he said was sort of um, most respected. So if he said you were never mistaken, it's not like someone else would say, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Everyone said, no, 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 you listen to Swamiji.
Mm.
So, and then he would sort of privately tell the parents, what are you doing? He's running wild. Like, you know, control him.
Yeah.
So he was playing the different games to make sure that you were also growing the way you should as a proper human being. But he was implanting that seed of knowledge right from the beginning. And just a little note that growing up in Kulu, and I think I've spoken to other people who've grown up in spiritual communities. There can be a strange sense that you want to rebel, and it's just like that with all, especially teenagers. Whatever you grow up in, you often want to rebel against. So I actually wasn't terribly interested in satsang as a teenager. I wanted to do other things, and I wanted to travel. I wanted to meet people. Um, I maybe wanted to get high, whatever. But but there was a certain point when I was around 19 when my mind had developed to a certain point where I started to suffer. I started to have things happen in my life where um, I was sometimes just really not happy with how things were turning out. And I was sort of, your mind creates negativity and you have to deal with that. And if you don't have the tools to deal with that, you can feel quite lost. And that's when I really started to attend satsang regularly. So that was kind of when my real sadhana began, actually.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, it's so interesting. It's also so beautiful and such a kind of wonderful experiment. And I know the listeners will remember I had Nandi on the podcast also, who is another one that grew up in in the same environment as you, hearing since a young age this knowledge, which is expanding your awareness, where kind of everywhere else in the world, the child is treated as this small individual little kind of creature, and it's like grows up in that way, and that smallness kind of remains with us. But to see, even just for me, as coming into the community and seeing my friends that have of all ages, but that have spent many, many, many years hearing the mantra, Amaram Ham, Madhuram Ham, like the listeners have heard it by now, and just having that, like you said, that reminder of the being that is never mistaken, like it does start to expand the awareness and sort of permeate the way in which, we perceive the world. And I think it's so interesting, like speaking, thinking about your sort of turning point at the age of 19, which is still like quite young, where a lot of 19-year-olds are still just like focused on like, all the other things, which that's a normal part of life, but to actually start to choose that this knowledge and this practice, which is so unusual, which is so rare and unique, to start to actually dedicate your life to being in satsang essentially. Like, did you start to like go back and sort of hear the things you'd always been hearing, but hear them Swamiji speaking, it's almost with like new ears because you've made the conscious choice now. Because, we all grow up in wherever we grow up and we're not choosing that. But to start to choose it is such a like critical point, I feel like, in all of our sadhana when we are saying, actually, I'm choosing this, and it's not necessarily the easiest path to go, kind of, at least for people in the more Western world, like to go against the grain, but to choose, like, what was that moment?
Well, actually, it was because a few reasons. I was down in the south of India and I had met a few travelers who were quite spiritual, and they were asking me all kinds of questions. They were fascinated by the fact that I grew up in an ashram, and they were asking me all kinds of questions about, what my guru was teaching and if I could speak about any of that. And I found myself quite lacking, which that I just couldn't quite articulate. It wasn't, maybe inside I knew, but it wasn't on the word level, and just because I hadn't really been paying attention. And I found it quite embarrassing. A little bit, it sort of made me feel a little bit maybe mistaken. It made me feel a little bit ashamed. Like, how could I have grown up in an ashram and I can't articulate really that much of what I've absorbed through, 16 years. So one of those friends came to visit me in Kulu, and Swamiji was so gracious and gave us sort of third row seats. So with our names on them. Normally I'm a back rower. Um, and so we were there basically every single day, and Swamiji just gave us so much attention, and so much kind of was really, it felt like drawing me in. Like like you're right, I definitely made the choice, but it was also like Swamiji would often say, like, when the ground is sort of like, I plant the seed, but it's sort of, there has to be that readiness there, and there
Mm,
was like this kind of perfect moment when I was drawn to satsang and Swamiji drew me in, and I was just ready to hear. And so there, but there's times when you're still wanting to go with the mind, to pull away, to not be in satsang, or to not be focusing on your truth, and that's when you have to choose. So it's kind of a lifetime of choice, actually. At the same time, there's a certain point when you sort of feel like it's the only choice that you can make.
mm,
But definitely one of the, I would say actually one of the hardest parts about sadhana is that you are kind of constantly challenged to go with the world, whatever that world is for you at that time, and to actually stay with your own highest self is sometimes a difficult choice. It's not always easy. It can be quite painful. You're having to face up to all kinds of um, sort of ignorance that you're discovering within yourself. I mean, basically, the whole practice of sadhana is kind of vanquishing the ignorance of the human being, and
mm,
that it's interesting. Like, even growing up in an ashram, it just grows, that human beingness. It just grows naturally,
mm,
by just the very nature of the mind, by the very nature of the waking state, by the nature of
mm,
the senses, the way that we perceive the waking state as real, we perceive ourselves as real, and the fact that we do get joy from the waking state, and from our senses. So it's obvious that we would be attracted to that. So when you're attracted so outward, then you do have to make that choice to be attracted inward, because it's sort of against the flow of the river that goes outwards. It's not it feels right. It feels that it is the sort of correct path, but it's not a kind of natural flow, at least not initially. It takes quite a strong willpower to stay with it and to really continually make that choice.
Point that it's like it's not only the suffering that draws us sort of out, it's two sides of the same coin. Whether we're enjoying the world or we're despising the world, it's all that rag and dvesh. It's the
Yeah.
aversion and the attachment, and it's two sides of the same coin. And yet, I think there's something really interesting about Swamiji's teachings and the teachings of Advaita Vedanta, which also we don't deny the world. And even when you were speaking about the way that you were brought up to remember yourself as unmistaken and totally perfect and yet equipped to be in the world, that actually when we can connect through, like what you're saying, the choice to do sadhana, the choice to hear guru's words, that we can then be in the world and make the world work for our situation, for our freedom, but actually not be so involved in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, I mean, it is quite tricky because for me personally, I have a difficult thing. I think you might also have this around injustice in the world. And that, all you have to do is tune into the news for 5 seconds. And I hate to use this word triggered, but you'll be pretty quickly triggered about the injustice that is sort of all permeating in the world. And one thing that Swamiji would say quite often is that the world will always be that way. So by trying to shape the world, even just the world around you, I mean, even just trying to shape your house, even just trying to shape things around you, everything degrades. You have to keep, even your house, you'd have to keep painting it every few years. Like, there's no way to really maintain and protect the waking state. It is sort of in this perpetual state of flux and decay, and it's if you're a sensitive being, it can be very, very difficult actually to be in the world. But Swamiji really wanted to create not sort of weaklings or softies or people who are just like so I have to hide in a cave because I can't handle anything. No, he didn't want, in the scriptures you hear about people going and living in the forest and they're just alone and they're meditating and just eating roots and berries or whatever. That wasn't Swamiji's thing at all. People would come and visit and they would say, I just want to live here. I just want to come and attend satsang. And he would say, no, no, you should go back, finish your degree, get a job, make some money, become independent, become strong, and then you can do this work. So it is very important, like what you're saying, to be competent in the world. You don't want to ever find yourself in a place of weakness of any kind, while also always having your attention on what actually matters. It's not that,
Mm.
you should do your work well and do your studies well and become strong and independent, but that's not actually the purpose of living your life. Your purpose of living your life is not a job or any of those things. The purpose is just for one thing, and that's to know that you're free. But
Mm.
that is quite challenging, and everything around you is sort of um, reinforcing that you're not free. So that's where uh, surrounding yourself with good company that reminds you that you are free, even when you don't remember that you're free, even when you're not tuned into your own freedom. Everyone around you says, no, 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 you're that's just your thinking. You don't have to listen to that. You're actually free. I know you as free. And so that's why it's nice to surround yourself with your podcast listeners who are all freedom loving beings. And in my case here, with the people at the ashram who are incredible inspirations for me in terms of making that choice. Like, okay, maybe it was a little bit easier for me. I was brought here at 3 years old by my parents, and so it was just readily available. For most other people here, they had to, quit jobs. I mean, some of them left their families. I mean, it was hard choices that they made to do this sadhana and to practice with a living guru. So no, it can be sometimes, depending on your situation, quite a tough choice. Also, there was no way for people to make money here. So, people were living quite rough, or hoping for generosity from other people. So, yeah, sometimes those decisions can be quite challenging. But it's just what you see is that anything you do, anything you have to, that this is so worth it, and
Hmm.
really is the foundation of who you are. So once you find that, then you just see that that's the only thing that you're here to do.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And you did touch on something that I know, like myself and the listeners, anybody that is like a life loving, freedom loving, love loving, spiritual seeker, I think we all have that sense of unsettledness in the world. And, we can sort of use that awareness of uh, uh, the sort of inability to turn a blind eye to injustice and suffering, like you said, in the world. And I think it's a constant topic and a
Yeah.
constant conversation. Like, it's a constant topic for me in my own sadhana, because I see how much the world disturbs me, and in my own practice I see it as a reminder that I of that the world is never going to bring satisfaction to me or to anybody else. And it's like, then there's this and yet kind of point, and I think so often in spiritual communities, or this love and light, like like you said, like Swamiji wasn't all like for the pacifist. There can be, though, a tendency for bypass, for people to say, but it's all one, so I can just sit back and do my sadhana and not worry, because the world is always going to be this way. So I'm just wondering, like, you've spent years and years and years listening to Swamiji, hearing an enlightened being answer all the questions of ignorance that you could ever imagine, from the most profound ignorance to the most ridiculous ignorance that people present to the guru and say, like, here's what's happening in my mind, help me. So I'm wondering if, like, you can think back, or even any questions that you had posed to Swamiji, like, how do we get free of the world and yet, like, live, or and again, I think of in the scriptures and things, it talks about seva and charity and things, but me, I came to India, I tried to save every child in India as soon as I got there. Like, that is going to create more bondage in me. That doesn't mean you don't take action and help, but it's like, what would he say to people when that question came up? Because I'm sure it came up again and again and again.
Definitely, it's a great question, and a very challenging one for a lot of people. I think at least what I got from what Swamiji had said many times is that the suffering that you're perceiving isn't taking place outside of you. The suffering is actually coming from inside. So while you can still donate to charity, you can still, it doesn't stop you from helping, but by thinking that the satisfaction or that sense of perfection or completeness will come from the helping itself, I think it
Yeah.
may be misguided, in the sense that it will go on forever. There's no way, at least we haven't seen that come about yet, for all beings to be helped. It's just, it doesn't work that way. So Swamiji emphasized helping yourself. So and that doesn't negate helping others. But if you become free inside, then you won't be even seeing other. You'll only be seeing yourself. And if you're seeing yourself, then of course you'll always help yourself. You'll always give dignity to yourself. So if everyone practices that, then there would literally be no more suffering, because everyone would be living a state of perfection. And so, there would be no more people, not to get too much into things of that nature, but there would be no more intense greed or like, I want more, or there wouldn't be those kinds of feelings in human beings because they wouldn't be human beings anymore. To be a human being means to have mind. And if you are free from the mind, you're not actually a human being anymore. You're divine. You're realized. And so if you are coming from the position of the realized being, then there is no more suffering. Because actually the part of the problem, part of the reason that we see suffering in the world is because we also think that two things. We think that I am real, that my identity is this person, Zach, with this body and all these qualities, and that I am in the world. So there's two problems. There's one, I am real as this, and I was born, and one day I'm going to die. And the second problem is that there's a world. So right away, there's really, like, if you think about it, there's no kind of human solution to any of those problems.
Mm-hmm.
And you're sort
Mm-hmm.
of, as a born person, you're trapped there. But like you were mentioning, Advait, well, basically that's that we're all one. And if you're all one, and that being is forever, is eternal, is omnipresent, is all permeating, then it's there before the world came into being, before this person came into being. It's here now because it's all permeating, it's ever present. And when the world is gone and I'm gone and the sun is gone, it's still ever present. Nothing has changed. So when your attention is there, then I don't think that you actually you see your eyes are still perceiving, your whatever faculties you have is still perceiving what's going on around you. You're not blind to it, but it doesn't hit you. It doesn't hurt you. Because I mean, and I've heard you talk about this with Vijay and other people, that the waking state is in terms of what Swamiji would say is often referred to as the longer dream. It's just another dream, but we take it to be real. So when you wake up, even from the worst nightmare, after a while it fades and you go, yeah, it was just a dream. A bad dream maybe, but just a dream. But for some reason, we wake up and we look around and we feel our body and we get hungry and we have to go eat and do all these things and we think, no, this is real. This is actually happening. That is what causes us to suffer. We suffer because we think that this is our reality. So of course there's suffering in this reality. There's birth in this reality and there's death in this reality. And one of my favorite things that Swamiji, that I heard him say recently when I was listening to an audio, when illusion dies, then birth dies and death dies. So
That's so radical.
it's so radical. That first thing is illusion. So if you understand what the illusion is, if you just focus on how do I become free from the illusion, then all the rest will just fall away. So that's really what the practice is. And yeah, I hope that answered your question. I don't know. I kind of went off.
Yeah, I mean, that's great because I have no idea what the question was, but this is no, I was thinking about a couple things. Like, even when you like say, you're talking about like the state of the human being. It's like when we sit and meditate and observe the function of the mind and the function of the human being, which will only ever be duality. The mind is there to discern between right and wrong, black or white, up or down, this or that. And that's its mechanism. That's how it's designed. So, it's like we wouldn't say to that tree, like, tree, you should be like, different. It's like that's the way the mind works. So it's like when we start to observe the mind and the mechanism of this body, and we're thinking of how do I bring my awareness to what is the illusion? When you're speaking, I was thinking about, like for me to just say in my head, like it's all one, like the mind can't really sort of grasp that.
That's true. It can't.
Because it wants to say like it is self-identified as me as one. But what I love, even when we think of the word me, like Swami would say, like, it's not me, little me with a lowercase m, it's me with the big M. And how do we get to that source, which is the essence, which permeates? And I love the analogy of like the fragrance of the flower. That's the oneness that permeates everything, that permeates each cell of my cell and your cell and the cell of everything that is alive has self in it, has the essence of that oneness in it. And when you were speaking, it was like you were so beautifully describing that beautiful prayer from the Upanishads, which is like the first original spiritual scripture of Purnamidam, that everything is whole, whether you take from the whole, like you said, even when the sun is gone, self alone is. So we have to kind of like, and then it's like there are no words to describe the self because it is beyond language and name and form. And yet we use these analogies. Like once I heard somewhere, maybe it was on the podcast or somewhere, that God can only be described in analogies because we can't actually put the attention there, but we can use the function of the mind of this human being. That's why we give dignity to the human experience, because it's our instrument for recognizing that unknown space. But it is a kind of like a sort of paradoxical riddle of like the human experience. Like, how do I be this human being? Like, even when you were speaking, I was thinking, like, just a FYI for the listeners, like, Zach, you are there, you work every day, like you have a job, you're not just like in the Himalayas, like, well, you are living your best life, but you know, we have to take care of this body. We do the things to, like you said, to earn money, to be independent. And it's like an and we keep like turning our sails or recalibrating, like go back to the truth, go back to the source, go back to that Om Purnam. Like it feels like a constant, like you said, choice. It's like keep going back, and then it's like pulls you back, and it's like
Yeah,
back to the oneness.
it's easy to
But
get,
it's like,
yeah, it's easy to get
yeah,
whiplash. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I think I just got whiplash there. It's like, and like you said too before, sometimes it's easier to hear it and to know it, and sometimes it's really, really hard. The world can feel so real.
Sometimes you're so with the mind, you even don't want to hear it. That's how
Mm,
strong the mind can become, that you don't even,
mm,
it's like, because I was saying, and you were just referencing making that choice. Sometimes the mind is so powerful, that sense of a sort of illusory voice in your head is of negativity is so powerful that you even don't want, you're like, I don't want that. Like you'd rather be with the suffering. You'd rather be with that. You did ask me, just to jump back briefly, if I'd asked Swamiji any questions. And I was just remembering, because I think it's important for the point that you just brought up, that I had been going through sort of like 6 months where I was just really struggling with my mind, and I asked Swamiji a question, sort of like I was sort of having difficulty articulating even the question, but I basically ended up just blurting out like, "What is that? Like, why did I just go through that? Like, what is that?" And Swamiji basically said, that's actually, like you said, the mind that's just its functioning. Well, just to be a human being is to be uneasy. Like that's
mm,
kind of one of the natural aspects of just being a human being. And I think we're always searching to be happy, to be worryless, and to be satisfied. Sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're worryless, and sometimes we're satisfied, though I would argue quite briefly. It's object
mm,
satisfaction through the senses, which is
mm.
very transitory. I mean, like, you can make a beautiful meal or have a beautiful meal in front of you, and it's gone in 25 minutes. So,
Or 10 minutes.
10 minutes, if I was too fast eaters. So, and there's a lot of things like that. So satisfaction, even like the rose, it's beautiful, but the season ends and the rose will fall. So satisfaction is incredibly transitory, and So is happiness, and so is being worryless. Although I have quite a happy, worryless nature. I think some people do. But true satisfaction, satisfaction that doesn't come and go, satisfaction that just is, like, truly satisfied, is not something that as a human being we really know where to find or how to get. Our family or might say you'd get it by having a family. Our teachers might say by getting a certain job, or having a certain kind of success, or maybe by money or through fame, which we just there's millions of stories. It's clear that that doesn't work. It's not an effective 100% satisfied all the time strategy. And there's really only one thing that does make you satisfied, and that's being tuned into the being that's always satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was kind of very liberating when Swamiji said that, don't worry about if you're easy or uneasy. That's the nature of being a human being. Tune into the one that's always easy. And that's where, yeah, we are conducting, basically every human being, whether they understand that they're doing this or not, is conducting an experiment. But really, the sadhak and the yogi, they are like a scientist in a laboratory, but looking inward. This person that we're looking inward is our laboratory, and we're conducting the experiment. Every time you sit to meditate, you're conducting an experiment. You're trying to become tuned into your being. And I mean, how is that anything other than just an experiment? It's just that instead of it being a sort of Western science experiment, it's a pure experiment
Mm.
of like Vigyan, of just the science of knowledge. So I feel like you had asked a specific question, and maybe I got on another tangent.
No, I love the tangents. They're so good. And when you were speaking, I was also, reflecting about how, the human being has that desire for, like you said, contentment and happiness. And then we attain all these things on that level that bring us some moment of satisfaction, but then ultimately become the object of our suffering as well. Like, you love somebody, they die, then you suffer. You have a job, then you lose it, then you suffer. Like, anything that brings us satisfaction in the waking state, like you said earlier, also will decay and die. Like, it's so almost silly when we really reflect on it, how we live in such an external world, that we're always sort of striving to be this ever balanced, ever relaxed, even person. And I also remember once hearing Swamiji said, the only like true relaxation is knowing you're unborn. Like, because any sense of balance on the level of the waking state will inevitably become unbalanced, like you're saying. So it's kind of like trying to like cling on to water or something. Like, it's like, so what is that space that is always a sure thing, like, and you said it's like why we get attracted to meditation, why we love to meditate, and why I think the people or the yogis or the searchers or seekers that are actually attracted to that inner space are so rare. Because like you hear people say yoga's for everybody, yoga's for all, but actually, like, the true inquiry it's available for all, but it's only for the one who really wants to get free from the ups and the downs of the world. And not everybody wants that, and that's fine. But it's like, once you start to want it and desire it, and like love to be sitting with your eyes closed, or love to be talking about the truth with fellow seekers, it's there's kind of nothing as satisfying as that.
Absolutely. And Swamiji would often say that a few things. One, that for people who aren't interested, who aren't seekers, um, or for people who are seekers, it's like their pearl has the hole in it so the thread can go through. If there's no hole in the pearl, how are you supposed to weave the thread through? Or we often say that that person, maybe they're not interested in seeking, they just don't have the atom for it. So there is to be a seeker is to be very unique. I mean, there is only, of 8+ billion people, there's only, of those 8 billion, actually a small, small group that are genuinely interested in searching for some meaning that is deeper than just what is offered to them in this human incarnation. And that's very rare and you should, for all the listeners, if you're interested, you should actually, not in a sort of egoful pat yourself on the back kind of way, but you should feel a sense of, maybe privilege is a loaded word, but you should feel a sense of greatness that you are a seeker, that you are someone who's interested in that, because it's very rare, and it means that there is an opportunity for you to know, to be satisfied. I mean that,
Mm.
and we're just look around at your friends, at your family, at your community, at your school, at your town, village, city, country, world. You're not going to find a lot of people who are living satisfaction. In fact, you might
Mm.
find nobody living satisfaction. So it's very rare, and you should search out good company. You should listen to Bobby's podcast. You should just keep at it. And it is a difficult work, but you did mention my work, and it's interesting. One thing that me and the people that I work with, Sarah and Jonty, we always agree on is that we're not working to work. We're not working, like, yes, you need to make money, okay? You need to survive in the world. But you can devote it to Guru. You can actually dedicate everything. I mean, Krishna in the Gita says to Arjun, devote all your actions to me. Well, you can do that. You can actually devote everything that you're doing to your highest self. So am I
Mm.
am I working to make money so that I can buy food and have a house, all those things? Maybe on like a basic level, yes. But if you can do that, then you can then live a life to study, to tune into your highest self. So and not just be um, working constantly. So for the sake of working. Because Swamiji would often say, like, you can spend your whole life working, and at the end, you get like as a gift from your company or something, a gold watch. That's all you get. And then you're, whatever, 60, 70, and then you're going to study then. It's like, the opportunity might be lost at that point. There's only so much time that we have, and it's precious. This incarnation is
Mm.
precious.
Mm.
Because we could have been born an animal. We could have been born we could have been born not a human being, and a human being is the only species that has the capacity to know their highest self. So it's a very rare and special opportunity. And so I do try to, no matter what's going on, no matter what work is there, no matter if it's a lot of work or if there's stress, whatever, it's so important to keep your attention on what actually matters, why I am here, why we are all here. And it helps with the whiplash. It really does. It's a guiding light. And
Mm.
it just means that you know what's actually important and what's not important. And there's a word that Swamiji would often use, discrimination, which it means something a little bit different now, but basically discernment, to use the power of discernment to find what works for you, what company is good for you, what situation is good for you. And by good for you, it just means what actually is conducive to be able to practice, to be able to meditate
Mm.
without someone coming and shaking you awake or something. You want to make sure you're surrounded by the company that appreciates what you're doing, that appreciates that practice is so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a beautiful reminder, and also such a good point that it's so funny, when you have these kind of threads that come up for you, like this week in some of my groups, including the Curious Yogi monthly satsang group. we've been talking a little bit about how every situation and every opportunity is a point of sadhana. And like, that's such a perfect, clear example of you speaking about your work environment. Like, and it made me think about the Bhagavad Gita where Arjun is doing his duty. We all have a duty in the world. We have to do, if you're a mother, you have to be a mother. You have to take care of your child. Like if I'm a yoga teacher, I have to go there and show up and teach the people the asana. You have to do the coding. Like we have to do it, but it's like, can we do it while remembering the self? Can we offer the fruits of our action up to that awareness that there is self permeating all, which means that the action, the self, it will all just the action is going to keep going, but how much energy do we spend trying to control, like we said before, the situation? And it's like every opportunity is a chance just to remember the self. And like you said, put ourselves in those environments. And, some of us, maybe the listeners aren't able to sort of change their situation very dramatically, but what we can start to change is our perception. And like, how can I make efforts to remember the self at all times? And when I forget, also, like one time, Rebecca, who I've also had on the podcast, Shika, I was like really anxious and I was crying and I was so like distraught. And I said to her, like, I'm so anxious. And she said, like, you kiss the feet of your anxiety because it's just reminding you you've forgotten the self. And that is an inspiration for you now to say, I don't want to suffer. What is this sense of anxiousness? Let me turn my attention to that which is ever unanxious, which is the self. And it's like, so how, like, it's how we change our perception of the waking state and always like turn the rudder back to the unanxious, unmistaken, ever-present self, like you said, that's free of death and free of birth. Like, it's so radical, but like the more that you talk about it and meditate on it, it's like, yeah, the only proof I need is within my own laboratory or my own experiment in the privacy of my own heart. And there it is. And lucky for us, we get to connect with other people that are also doing that experiment that you talked about. And then it's like, okay, well, I think we're on the right track.
We're on the right track. I love that you said, always remembering the self, because there's a very humorous but I think potent example when there was a house near the ashram was you remember was burning, and it was a huge flame. The whole house had gone up in flames, and the flames were sort of, the wind was blowing the flames near this other house where this other person at the ashram was living. And so obviously in some panic, collected his personal belongings and ran out of the house, fearful of the fire. And the next day, Swamiji said to him, and during that whole process, how many times did you remember the self? So it's so clear that the self is to be remembered always, no matter what is going on. And that's the faith, that's the devotion, that's the grace, is that the self actually, really, whether you remember or you don't remember, it never leaves you. Often Swamiji, you'd go up to ask a question, and Swamiji would say, for me, you're already free. I don't see you as someone bound, needing to go through a process to become free. I treat you as free, and I see you as free. And so don't waste time wanting to go through a long process. Just know what I know, which is that you're free already. And it kind of does help to, because that sense that, oh, I just need to peel another layer of the onion and then I'll become it, that can also go on forever. That sense that, oh, I'll just be doing sadhana forever. Swamiji did say something really beautiful to someone once, that you think that because I'm realized that the realization has ended, but actually every day is brighter than the last, which I think is just so exquisitely beautiful, that it is, the realization is never ending. But at the same time, you don't need to necessarily feel that I will be sort of trapped in the sense that, oh, I just one day I'll be free. you can still, again, you can run and chew gum at the same time. There's a lot of different things you can do at the same time. It is so essential. This is the one of the main things I learned from Swamiji. Start with I am free. Then you can still work on yourself as you need to. You can still continue to meditate. You still find, oh, that needs to be worked on, and I don't want to, and I'm suffering here, I'm suffering there, change this, change that. You can still be flexible and malleable, but start with that I'm free. That's such an
Mm.
important thing, which I actually think that a lot of the scriptures maybe don't always capture, and is something that is a little bit unique to Swamiji, is that he kind of was wanting to skip all those steps. Let's just go straight to you're you're unmistaken, you're perfect, you're free now. You want to go
Mm.
through a whole life of thinking, first I'm a human being and I need to make it to freedom. First start with freedom. You can put the human being on top of the freedom, but start with the freedom.
Yeah. And that made me think of actually Swami's commentary on that one Bhagavad Gita verse, Yoga Karmasu Kashalam. And even like when we think, okay, what does start at freedom mean? It means start at the state of yoga, start at the state of knowing yourself as the self. And then whatever action comes after, it's like, it's like all good in a sense. Maybe it's not actually good, but we're coming from that place of knowing who we are, rather like the way the world functions, including the mind, it's going the opposite. It feels like sadhana and living yoga in this way means always starting at freedom, which is why we like to start our day with our eyes closed for a few minutes and then take action. And action happens spontaneously. We don't even have to do anything. It just comes. Like your foot will step forward. You will pick up the toothbrush and it will do it. Like, it's like we think we have to do so much, but actually to just remember, like you're saying, self alone is, and it's like, okay, then that's how I feel. We start to live our sadhana in all situations. The more we remember that, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then we remember it and then we remember it. And it's just like a lifetime of remembering. And it's so beautiful what Swamiji said about it becoming brighter. And I feel that knowing, okay, the being inside is already realized, but me as the seeker and the searcher and the lover of that space, it's like each and every day does become brighter when we start to just, we keep knowing it, we keep expanding our own awareness. It's such a beautiful incarnation in life that we get to do this work and like hear the truth every day, even if it's for 1 minute. And I love what Swamiji said. He said, you don't have to change anything in your life. You just add 5 minutes of meditation, which means closing your eyes, knowing who the self is, knowing yourself as pure free forever. It's like, wow.
Anybody can do that. It's fully acceptable. It's acceptable
Yeah.
to everyone, and it,
Mm.
and it is the truth of everyone. So why wouldn't you want to do it? I mean, and like you said, Swamiji, he made it. He distilled it into such simple language, because like the scriptures were written a very long time ago. I mean, all the biblical scriptures were too. So the language that they're written in is very, very difficult to understand. And that is the beauty of Swamiji. He took those scriptures and he boiled it down to its simplest form: unborn, pure free forever. Amaramham Madiramham. You're never born, you never die. You're immortal. You're perfect. I mean, uh, it's all there. It's all there in just a few words. And it also, if any problem seems to arise, go back to that. Go back to that mantra, Amaramham Madiramham, and you'll find that it it is the foundation. It solves all those problems. There's a problem in front of me. Oh, wait, I was never born. I'm never going to die. Wow. It's amazing how that solved this problem that seemed so important 5 seconds ago. But
Mm.
it is a practice because you have to have faith in that it's real.
Mm. Faith, yes. And I think it's interesting because, faith We have faith. I just speaking from my own personal experience, I have faith in Guru's words because I've seen that they work, and I think that's something that's also important to distinguish, when someone is on this path or someone is listening to this podcast. Swamiji said, you don't go stop at where my finger is pointing. Like, you go in the direction, which means, like, in the Vedic teachings, it's such an essential element that it's meant to be experienced through one's own, like you said, experiment. So we hear the words, we take in the knowledge in any way we can, and then we close our eyes to know it for ourselves. So Swamiji said, here's the food, I'm giving it to you, but we have to eat it. We have to digest it. And that's becomes the that's the path. That's what we're doing. We're all just taking the nourishment. Our ears are open to the knowledge, so we hear that ring of the truth, and then we take it into our own perception. And I think it's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah. This has been such a good conversation, Zach. I feel like we could go on, and I know we probably will at some point. You are my fellow yogi, and I just have loved hearing your wisdom, and I know the guests will have so much appreciation for you also. It's inspiring to hear just the perception and the words and the insights from anybody that's on this path. So just loved having you.
Thank you so much.
And
yes, thanks.
Yeah, it's been great. And I love to finish the episode with 3 quick questions. So, one sentence kind of answers. So the first question is, now let me remember it. The first question is, at this point in your sadhana, are you still curious about anything?
I am curious to see, actually, just to see how the unfoldment keeps unfolding. Like when Swamiji said, it's brighter every day, I am incredibly delightfully curious to see each new day as it dawns and as it brightens, and just to see what that is going to look like for me.
Beautiful. And next up, a great Mahavakya that you take with you that has inspired your sadhana that you can share with us.
Well, I was interacting with Swamiji one time, and he said to me, it is his own self, he was speaking about me, it is his own self that has come to me to be one with him. And I hold that all the time, because it is such a pure expression of oneness. And it shows that there's no disciple and there's no guru. It's just one. So I hold that. That is my Mahavakya that I repeat often.
Beautiful. And finally, if you could sum up this conversation in one sentence.
Magically just spectacular and delightful, which is who you are, Bobby, in all ways, in all things, at all times.
Wow, amazing. Well, I'm so glad you graced us with your insight and your magic and wisdom and splendidness, because I know you've been a supporter of me and all my million projects, and also this project, and you've been there, watching me do things and listening here and there. And so I appreciate your support always on all levels, but mostly the support in sadhana, and just so wonderful to spend some time one-on-one with you. And my cheeks are starting to hurt now from smiling. So great. So just big hugs.
Big hugs to you, Bobby. And I just want to end very briefly by just saying how much I love this project. There's been many times when I have maybe been feeling a little disconnected from satsang, a little, especially when I'm traveling outside of Kulu, just feeling a little bit distant. And I tune into your podcast and listen to some of your conversations with people, some of your satsang with people. And I'm immediately in satsang. So it is such a beautiful project, and I'm really thankful that you're doing it, and it's been such a pleasure to be part of it.
Amazing. And I will just add one point though, that is such a good thing to remember about satsang and the experience of satsang. It's so much about also expressing what we know. And that is something that Swamiji sort of instilled in everybody, that you speak what you know. And that's so, for me, has been such a way, like this project, but also just like being with friends and having the opportunity to churn on the knowledge and express it back. It's like, that's a part of satsang too. I think many people hear, okay, what is satsang? And they think it's just the listening, but it's also the speaking.
That's so beautiful. That's so essential. Swamiji really called us to speak all the time, which public speaking is very, very challenging, but to speak it is to know it. So like you said, and also you have an internal dialogue, but you aren't actually expressing it. And the way it gets expressed helps you to see, what do I know, and also what do I not know? Where is that work needing to take place? So it is an essential component.
So we nailed it today.
Nailed it.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider supporting the show at patreon.com/acuriousyogi podcast. And please leave a review. It really helps the show reach more people. Let's stay curious, connected, and keep walking the path together. In total delight, this is Bobby signing off until next time.